All right, now let's move on to writing the letter. This is basically going to be, this section is going to be an outline, so a plan of attack for your letter. You don't have to follow the same plan, but it is very helpful in order to prepare you, in other words, note-taking, to help you write the letter. So step one, let's take notes from the reading. So let's go back to, or actually let's open up a Word document. So that's where you're going to go ahead and take notes from the reading. And it could be an open office document, Google Docs, whatever you think is best for you. If you want to handwrite it, you can do that as well. But for me, I prefer to use a Word or a Google Doc and document. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that. So what I did was I created this Word document and I cut and paste the instructions. So I cut and paste, sorry, not the instructions, the questions that I need to answer in my letter. I cut and paste those into this Word document. And what I did this in advance, so it looks a little bit different, but I went through and I answered each question for the different parts of the letter. So if you remember in the instructions, it asks you several questions like what is climate change, what are the possible effects on your community. I went ahead, cut and paste those, and then I answered the question. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at paragraph one. Paragraph one asks you 2 to 3 different questions. The first one is what is climate change and what are the possible effects on your community. So I went back to the lesson on what is climate change, which was, if you remember, lesson 5.1. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over to that just so that you have somewhat of an idea of what that lesson looks like. Again, I'm not going to read through the whole lesson. I just want to be able to show you how to find information in the lesson. So let's go ahead and click on what is climate change. Okay, I read through the lesson, what is climate change, and I took notes. Climate change refers to, and in this case I copied and pasted, and copying and pasting is fine for note taking, but when you go to write your letter, never copy and paste. Always make sure to write in your own words. So it refers to increasing temperatures and erratic weather patterns that have been occurring since the early 1900s. That's one of the notes I took. The other note I took is that it also is known as global warming. And then I found for some of the possible effects on my community, climate change can have a negative impact on living conditions, food supplies, and animals. And then I also found that the rise in overall world temperatures is leading to changes in weather patterns. So again, I copied and pasted the questions that need to be answered for each paragraph, and I briefly answered those. The next question is, why is this topic important to you? This is a personal response based on what you have learned from the reading, from your personal experiences, from what you have read about or what you've seen in the news. Again, why is this topic important to you and why you need to address this in your letter? Many students actually are going to refer to health reasons and also the impact on our environment and animals. So, for instance, increased temperatures are causing the polar ice caps to melt. This is devastating to the animals of northern regions. It's also bad because it will cause a rise in sea levels and create many dangers. For example, coastal communities. All right, so that is why the topic is important to me. And it's also refers to what is climate change and what are the possible effects on your community. Part 2 talks about solutions. So let's go back to the lesson again. The lessons, again, 5.1 is what you need to focus on for what is climate change. And then I'm going to click through to 5.2. 5.2 is going to talk about the effects on climate change. If you remember from paragraph 1, you need to state the effects of climate change. Lesson 5.3, I'm going to skip over the activity. There's actually a couple of activities I'm going to skip over to get to lesson 5.3. And 5.3 talks about solutions for climate change. So this is where you're going to find answers for paragraph 2 of your letter. And you're going to read through this and you're going to click on 10 solutions for climate change, and it takes you to an article in the Scientific American, and it has 10 possible solutions for the earth for your community. So make sure that you read through these. It definitely talks about, moving closer to work, making good choices when it comes to consuming. So click on that, and that will help you out with this part, which is what are two solutions. So I read that. Okay, I read it, and I'm going to take notes. Here are the notes that I took. One way to dramatically curtail transportation fuel needs is to move closer to work, use mass transit, or switch to walking or cycling. I also took notes that says the easiest way to cut back on greenhouse gases emissions is simply to buy less stuff. So the less things you do, the less you consume, the fewer materials that need to be used, the less waste that you have. And then maybe, the less that companies will make some of these things that consume a lot of resources and that create pollution. All right, good driving and good car maintenance, such as making sure tires are properly inflated, can limit the amount of greenhouse gas emissions from a vehicle. Little things like that. Choosing food items that balance nutrition, taste, and ecological impact. So right now, there's a really big move for people to ban the use of, or not ban, but to stop using straws. So maybe you go to a restaurant and you decide, you know what, no thank you, I'm not going to use a straw to drink my water or my soda or whatever it is that you're drinking. So again, those are solutions. Make sure to explain their benefits and outcomes in your letter. And that's for paragraph 2. So now you've taken notes. Okay, you've taken notes on paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. And you're going to write your letter. Here's an example of a letter. I'm going to just briefly take you through the format first. So let's go through the format from the example that we gave earlier, and from the template you'll notice that this isn't an actual student that wrote this letter. This is not the student. I made up their name and location. But S. Adams wrote this letter. Here's all their information as far as their address, phone number, their contact information. They put in 2 spaces, and they put in the date, another 2 spaces, and here's the address of who they are writing to. So they are writing to Mayor Howells in Roslyn Town Hall. Here's the address. They put in a space between the address and then Dear Mayor Howells. Let's go ahead and read the letter together. That way, this will give you an idea of how you can outline your letter and the direction that you want to take. Dear Mayor Howells, I am writing about some of my concerns about climate change. Climate change, or the heating of our Earth and resulting erratic weather patterns, is occurring much faster than it was initially predicted. It is a huge problem for future generations, since climate change will eventually become irreversible. This could greatly affect our town of Roslyn and many other inland towns, as rising sea levels may flood coastal communities, devastating families and causing an increase of displaced residents. This means a lot to me, since I love Roslyn and care about what happens to our coastal communities here in Washington State. Okay, so paragraph 1, this student talks about what climate change is, why it's an issue, and why it's important to them. Paragraph 2. We can help to minimize climate change starting here in our own community. We can start by reducing the amount of personal driving that we do, increasing public transportation, and walking or riding bikes instead of driving. We could also try funding some initiatives for alternative and renewable energy technology, which would help our environment and create new jobs. I have faith in our local government. I know that you will consider enforcing some of these possible local solutions so that we can reduce climate change and live healthier, longer lives on Earth and in our communities. Sincerely, S. Adams, Concerned Citizen. So there you have it. Again, it's broken down into 2 paragraphs. They talk about what climate change is, some of the resulting issues that will occur because of climate change, and why it's important to them. Paragraph 2 talks about how to minimize climate change in their community, gives some ideas, some and the benefits. So there you have it. There is the letter. There is an example. Feel free again to use that letter to model your own letter. So let's go back and let's talk about what to do before you submit your work. Just like the image says, be wise and revise, read over your work, edit your work, or have somebody do it for you. Check to see if it makes sense, and check for spelling and punctuation errors. You also want to read the instructions again and make sure you included everything. So read your letter, edit it, read the instructions, and make sure everything that make sure that you have addressed all the questions, the minimum requirements. For instance, in this one, it's 2 paragraphs. You have 5 to 7 sentences per paragraphs. Make sure you read the instructions again before you submit your work. So that is it. If you have any questions about this activity, about formal letter writing, please feel free to contact me or your own social studies teacher. Of course, contact me if you would like a copy of any of these letters, the templates, or even a copy of this presentation. This is going to be available indefinitely on YouTube, so feel free to come back to this assignment or activity. And then if you do need to get a hold of me, I'm going to show you how to do that from your class. So let's go ahead and go to your dashboard and go down to current world issues. And this is how you're going to contact your teacher. It looks like they're not online right now. If they were online, it would show green. Either way, they're going to get the chat. So send me a chat by doing this. You can click on email. You can send an email, or you can click on chat. So if you click on the chat bubble, you're going to get a chat box on the right. It looks like it's not appearing right now. Let's go ahead and try that again. Okay, the chat bubble types up. I typed my response. I hit this arrow or enter button, and there it is. And I actually had sent a chat earlier. It says, "Hello, I would like a copy of the example climate change letter. Thank you." So there you have it. That is how you send a chat or an email to your teacher. Again, please contact me if you would like a copy of the letter. Thank you for joining us today. Have an awesome weekend.